At one point, Jovenel Moïse offered a glimmer of hope for Haiti at a time of numerous crises. A former businessman who wanted to lift people out of poverty in the poorest country in the Americas.
Political stability is the first public resource. In no country on earth is it possible to talk about development unless there is political stability, unless there is social peace.
But his years in office were challenging, and he faced allegations of money laundering and corruption. Moïse became president of Haiti in 2017 after being chosen by the former leader Michel Martelly to become his successor of the center-right Haitian Tête Calais party. 2015's election was the first to declare him winner, but the vote was overturned after allegations of fraud and violent street protests. The rerun was then delayed by Hurricane Matthew, which caused widespread destruction in the south. But when it was finally held in 2018, it sparked disagreements about when Moïse's term would end. After legislative elections were delayed that year, Moïse stayed on to rule by decree without a parliament. He tried to reassure Haitians even as things deteriorated around him.
Violence does not work with development and democracy. We have to cut bridges with these old practices that are putting the country behind.
Despite his calls for calm, the protests against him and his government got worse. He was accused of inaction in the face of increasing violence, a surge in kidnappings for ransom, and the growth of armed gangs. In March, he declared some forms of protest as acts of terrorism. Days before his assassination, Moïse announced a new prime minister to tackle criminal violence, what would have been his 7th in 4 years. Not long after, a group of individuals broke into his home in the capital Port-au-Prince and shot him dead.
Haitian authorities now say at least 28 suspects were involved in the assassination of the country's president, lining them up for the world to see behind a table displaying firearms, machetes, and Colombian passports. Haitian police say 17 men have been arrested, including 15 Colombians and 2 Haitian Americans. 3 suspects died in a gun battle, and 8 others are still on the run. Haitian government officials identified the U.S. citizens to NBC News as James Salages and Joseph Vincent. The New York Times, citing a Haitian judge involved in the investigation, reports that the 2 Americans were working as translators and said they were not in the room when President Jovenel Moïse was killed. With the country in turmoil, the U.S. is sending FBI and Homeland Security officials to help investigate. Some protesters don't believe the government's account and are skeptical that a supposedly professional group of killers could carry this out but be caught so quickly.
Haiti is in a state of shock.
Laurent Lamothe is a former prime minister of Haiti. Could an assassination like this have been carried out without some inside help?
A lot of people are not understanding some of the ease of access to the president's house and the breakdown of security. There's been a complete security breakdown in the president's security detail.
The former prime minister says Haiti's first lady was shot 3 times. Tonight, she's still in critical condition at a Miami hospital, Peter.
We'll convert your children, yes we will. Preaching one and all, there's really no escaping it. 'Cause even grandma likes RuPaul.
The Taliban are on the march and gaining territory at an astonishing rate. We've been invited to meet them inside their own base. They want to show us, as foreign journalists, how strong they are, and also how they're in no mood to compromise. The departure of the bulk of the American and other NATO forces has emboldened them, and they smell victory. One commander in Wardak province told me they would never work alongside the other groups in government.
As a real Afghan, we would never do that because they are the people who are killing and kidnapping, who are thieves and who are corrupt, so we'll never work with them.
We're the first foreign journalists to see the latest army base the Taliban have captured in the province, and they want to show us the treasure trove of military riches they've seized with it. Many of these boxes supplied by the Americans hadn't even been opened before the Taliban got hold of them.
RPG.
Whoa.
Can anyone believe that the Taliban wants peace when you've got all these weapons now?
Most of the time we don't rely on all of this, we just rely on Allah. But it does help us a lot, and it's given us a lot of new weapons we can use in battle. Of course we want peace. All people want peace here, but the government doesn't want peace with us.
From this base alone, the Taliban say they seized about 900 guns, 30 Humvees, and 20 army pickup trucks.
It's a whole pile of destroyed vehicles, military vehicles there, and a huge area that they've managed to take over. I think the Taliban will see this and view this as a substantial victory.
And it follows a nationwide pattern of Afghan soldiers putting up only a half-hearted fight. Many of the fighters we saw were carrying new weapons seized during the taking of the base. The white flag that signifies the Taliban takeover is flying in large swathes of the country right now, and they're creeping closer to the capital.
We begin tonight with the oppressive heat wave in the west, intensifying the already critical drought, record-breaking temperatures well into the triple digits. This on the heels of already deadly heat that killed nearly 200 people in the Pacific Northwest in recent weeks. Volunteers you see there in Sacramento handing out water and food. The extreme heat fueling dozens of large fires as well. The Beckworth Complex fire on the California-Nevada border doubling in size in the last 24 hours. Reservoirs and lakes at dangerously low levels, 93% of the West experiencing drought conditions. The heat stretching from California to Montana, 32 million people now under heat alerts, temperatures peaking today and tomorrow. Residents in several states being asked to conserve power and water. Rob Marciano standing by with the forecast, but first, ABC's Will Carr leads us off from Palm Desert, California.
Tonight, life-threatening triple-digit temperatures are gripping much of the West. 32 million residents from California to Montana under excessive heat alerts, record-shattering as the region faces its third wave of dangerous heat in just a matter of weeks.
It's hot. It's like you're on fire.
Sacramento hitting 111 degrees, Grand Junction, Colorado 107, Palm Springs 118 degrees this weekend, Death Valley reaching 130, just 4 degrees shy of the hottest temperature ever reached in the world. Here in Rancho Mirage, this playground's empty, and for good reason. Check out just how hot it is out here. 164 degrees, hot enough to give a child third-degree burns. These record temperatures come on the heels of that deadly heat wave in the Pacific Northwest that killed nearly 200 people. With this heat comes a drought emergency. In California, the entire state is facing a drought. 85% is now in extreme drought. This time last year, the extreme drought was just 2%. In a dramatic call to action, the governor this week calling on residents in industries to voluntarily cut their water usage by 15%. On top of the relentless drought and heat, the West is now battling wildfire season. How dangerous are these conditions?
They're dangerous. We're exposed to the heat often, and these guys are working 24-hour, 36-hour shifts.
The bootleg fire in Oregon threatening power lines used to import energy to California, which prompted officials today to issue a statewide alert asking all residents to conserve power in an attempt to stabilize the power grid. The state of Nevada also asking residents to conserve energy this weekend. Firefighters tonight battling the massive Beckworth Complex fire on the California-Nevada border. That fire doubling in size in just the past 24 hours, with more than 55,000 acres burned.
And Will Carr joins us now from Palm Desert, California. Will, this is the third heat wave in a row gripping much of the West. How rare is it to see such high temperatures this early and this often in the season?
Whit, it is rare and it is hot here. This is the third heat wave we've had in just a short amount of time. At this point last year, we only had one heat wave with temperatures that reached these levels. And the fire crews here tell me they're not only worried about the weather this weekend, but they're worried about the impact it's going to have on fire season moving forward, because we still have a long way to go. Whit.
Yeah, those firefighters will have their hands full. Will Carr for us. Thank you. Let's get right to ABC's senior meteorologist Rob Marciano. And Rob, this heat is truly historic.
It is, you know, each one of these heat waves has been threatening or breaking all-time high temperature records, and Vegas could do just that. And it's expansive, too. Across 10 states, we've got heat alerts up. So this heat wave is encompassing a lot of people. 113 tomorrow as far north as Redding, California, 103 in Salt Lake. 117 is the all-time record for Vegas. They'll threaten that again tomorrow, which should be the peak. But temperatures remain above 100 for a lot of these western cities into the work week. Severe storms tonight. We've got them from Oklahoma to Kentucky. A quieter day tomorrow, but the next few hours will be rough in that part of the Midwest. Whit?
The word rapture means to seize, grasp, or grab. And it refers to Christ coming to retrieve his church, believers who have accepted him as Savior. That is the next event on the prophetic calendar. Jesus had told his disciples, I'm leaving. He's getting ready to die on the cross, rise from the dead, and ascend back to heaven. And he told them, you can't come with me now, but don't worry, I'm going to come get you. I'm going to come get you. When the disciples heard this, they were traumatized, because for 3 years, Jesus had been their leader, their teacher, their provider. He had been their guide. He'd been their help. He'd been their deliverer. He'd been their whole world for 3 years. And now he says, I'm leaving, and I'm coming back. In fact, here's what he told them in John chapter 14, verses 1 to 3. Do not let your heart be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many dwelling places. If it were not so, I would have told you, for I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. That is the first specific reference to the rapture. I'm coming to receive you back to me.